Right. I
Have a
appreciate it,
great session.
Rafael. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. So first, we wanted to thank our sponsors, make sure that everybody knows that we are doing this event with the help of all of these guys. So I just wanted to stop here for a second before we move into the presentation. And then before I start talking about the topic, Dynamics 365 Sales and LinkedIn Sales Navigator, I wanted to introduce myself real quick to you guys. My name is Dian Taylor. I work at RSM. I'm a director there, and I focus mainly on pre-sales, which means that I get to do the fun playing around with all the features, right, and building demos for customers. I actually also write blog articles as well. I'm a Microsoft MVP, just like Rafael. So feel free to check out my website at d365goddess.com or follow me on Twitter at d365goddess. I also have my YouTube channel, and if you guys want to reach out on LinkedIn and connect, feel free to do that, obviously, as well. I'm going to go ahead and turn my camera off so it's not as confusing. We're going to go ahead and get started now. So some of the topics that I'm going to be talking about today is that configuration as well. Why LinkedIn Sales and Navigator and Dynamics 365 seems pretty straightforward, so I'm not going to hammer on that too much. We're going to jump right in. Like I said earlier when I was talking to Rafael, this is really configuration from both ends, right? So not just on the D365 side, but also on the LinkedIn Sales Navigator side. We're going to talk about data validation. I'm going to do lots of demos. We're going to talk about data synchronization, what that is, what that means, SmartLinks, then contact and lead creation from LinkedIn to Dynamics 365. Then I'll also show you how we can embed that Sales Navigator widget on a form, more demos, and then lastly, I'm going to touch a little bit on pricing as well. So now that we've established kind of what we're talking about, right, which is really that integration between these two tools, right, Dynamics 365 and LinkedIn Sales Navigator, really allowing us to use that platform on LinkedIn, right, LinkedIn Sales Navigator, to surface data directly inside of Dynamics 365. So most of you probably heard of this integration, but don't exactly know the details on how everything works. Now, I'm not going to cover all of the features in LinkedIn Sales Navigator. I'm just going to cover what's relevant through this integration with both of those platforms. So with this integration, we're going to be able to move data between applications, which means that we'll have to enable and configure these integrations, like I said earlier, both in LinkedIn Sales Navigator and in Dynamics 365. So I'll talk about what data can be synchronized a little later in this presentation, but with data flowing into Dynamics 365, right, from Sales Navigator, this gives us more options to perform actions on that data, right? So for example, you can use Power Automate processes such as setting up alerts, right? We now actually also have the in-app notifications that we could utilize for that. So when something happens in LinkedIn Sales Navigator that writes back to Dynamics, we can use Power Automate to do alerts and stuff like that as well. And then obviously we can report on those LinkedIn activities as well, right? There's a lot of stuff that we can do with that as well. I'm going to see if I can get this little thingy to go away. So before you can do this, obviously, there are some prerequisites that you need to consider as well. So, for example, Microsoft Dynamics 2016 or Dynamics 365 on-premise is not really fully supported, especially the on-premise one is what I'm talking about. And then what you need to have license-wise is you need to have the Microsoft Relationship Sales subscription for Dynamics 365, and that's really both of them. That MRS, right, as you can see on the slide, is really a subscription that gives you both Dynamics 365 with LinkedIn Sales Navigator. And then usually I get the question too, like, oh, I cannot buy that because I don't have a Microsoft Enterprise agreement. Is that correct? Yes, you do need to have that agreement in place with Microsoft in order to purchase that particular type of subscription. So if you don't have that, then what do? Well, then you need to sign up either for LinkedIn Sales Navigator Team or LinkedIn Sales Navigator Enterprise. So the difference here between those and Microsoft Relationship Sales is that MRS license allows you to basically get a cheaper rate, right? It entails both Dynamics 365 sales and that LinkedIn Sales Navigator subscription in one. And again, if you don't have that, you would have to get Dynamics 365 sales and then Sales Navigator Team or Enterprise. Make sure you also, obviously, in order to when you're using your browser, you need to have that JavaScript enabled as well, as you can see over here. Otherwise, it's just not going to work. And make sure that you disable your pop-up blocker for the Dynamics 365 domain, which you probably already did if you're utilizing Dynamics 365 sales for that. So by default, these LinkedIn solutions are not automatically installed. So as an administrator, you need to install those solution packages before other users can work with them. So you can start this installation. You use actually two places where you can do this right now, but I'm going to focus here by showing you that you can navigate to business management, right? That's in that advanced setting of Dynamics 365. And then you can click on the LinkedIn Sales Navigator button to start that installation. And that's what you see over here, right? Once you start that, you're actually going to see that installation window that just popped up, as you can see over here. You can click continue, and then once that installation is done, then you can go back to that previous screen. And then what you can do is when you click that, let me go back here. When you click here on LinkedIn Sales Navigator again, you'll see this window that's going to allow you to turn on those settings, right? So obviously to enable that Sales Navigator integration, and then you can also take on or turn on photo refresh if that's something that you're using. And we'll talk about what exactly that is. And then lastly, you can also turn on the LinkedIn Sales Navigator controls on the forms, and those are really tabs that provide some of that LinkedIn information directly inside of your forms. So on the account form, the contact form, the lead form, I believe also on the opportunity form. So these tabs are actually hidden by default. So again, you can just unhide them, right, and make them visible for your users. And then if you wanted to excuse me, add a widget on a form, you can do that as well by adding a form control. So after you do that, then we're going to have to go ahead and set up the connection from Sales Navigator to Dynamics 365. And in this setup, you can enable write back from Sales Navigator to Dynamics 365. And write back allows us to save information that was created in Sales Navigator back to Dynamics 365. And I'm going to discuss those details a little bit later during this presentation. So it's going to take about 24 hours for the systems to sync. And once you have successfully connected both of them, then you're going to have to set your Sales Navigator CRM settings for the organization. And all of those options are accessible, obviously, from within Sales Navigator. So I'll show you that in a second as well. Right, so as soon as you click here on this Connect to CRM button, and I'll show you that a little bit later as well, you're going to get this little pop-up window, and then you can connect to Dynamics 365. Now, the nice thing with this is that besides setting up your production environment, you can also simultaneously maintain a connection between a sandbox environment and Dynamics or Sales Navigator. So after the instances has been connected to that sandbox environment, then an administrator will need to add and enable users so they can start testing some of those features. Now, keep in mind with the sandbox that there can only be up to about 10 users to activate it within that sandbox environment, and that will last for a maximum period of 30 days. So once you add those users, they're actually going to notice that banner on the top of Sales Navigator indicating that they're connected to the sandbox environment, right? So that's kind of what you see over here. And then obviously, if you want to disconnect, you can just click here on disconnect, and that's going to allow you to do exactly that. Now, after you have configured the synchronization, and you actually, in order to get that synchronization functionality, you will need the enterprise license, and that's LinkedIn Enterprise, right? Sales Navigator Enterprise. Then you can configure data validation. And when data validation is turned on in Dynamics 365, you're going to get a new option set field that's called MSDYN_org change status. And the display name for that is not at company flag. And that's a field, it's a drop down that's added to the contact entity in Dynamics 365. So the values of that option set or dropdown are no feedback, not a company, and ignore. And the way that this works is that when the current company of a LinkedIn contact or lead in Dynamics 365 does not match the account that the contact is related to in Dynamics 365, then this field will automatically be set to not at company. So now you can perform searches on that, and you can create views for that. And you don't even have to necessarily create your own views, because there are some additional views that come with, this turning on when you turn on this functionality. So for contacts, you're going to get 2 additional views: all contacts not at company, my contacts not at company. And for opportunity views, you get all opportunities at risk, contact left, and my opportunities at risk, contact left. And obviously that is filtering out on that not at company flag on that contact record. And then lastly, you're also going to be able to see this information on the account org chart. You're going to see a big red dot next to any contacts where this field is actually set to not at company. Now, photo refresh actually updates the contact records in Dynamics 365 with the most recent profile picture from LinkedIn. Now, I wanted to mention real quick that these updates, right, that photo refresh and the ability to see whether or not somebody is still at a company, those updates are actually being pushed every 24 hours. So this is a daily sync. This is not like, you go on LinkedIn, somebody changes their picture, and 5 minutes later, you see that in your Dynamics 365 instance. Again, this is a daily update that occurs. Now, data validation also helps with the matching of Dynamics 365 records with LinkedIn records, right? So the Dynamics 365 fields that are used to match leads and contacts are first name, last name, title, company, country, phone number, and email. And what I'm talking about is when I'm talking about matching, is really linking that profile of that LinkedIn user with a record in Dynamics 365, right? So that's kind of what you see here. This is a contact information area, I should say, on the contact form, and you'll have the same thing on the lead form. And this is how it finds the matches. Now, if a match is incorrect, obviously we can also unmatch that, but this is how the system automatically matches the LinkedIn profile with that contact or lead in Dynamics 365. And so the more updated your data is in Dynamics 365, the easier and better those matches obviously will be. Now, we also have matching with account records as well. And these are the fields that are being used for those account records, right? Company name, the full address, website, phone number. We have industry fields, and then a number of employees as well. And so here you can kind of see that this can also be on the LinkedIn profile for an account or for a contact record. And you'll see that a little bit later when I demonstrate the functionality, where we're going to be able to link those account profiles directly also to an account record in Dynamics 365 and or a contact record as well. So another thing that I wanted to talk about is some additional configuration options. I already mentioned that a little bit earlier on, right? We're going to be able to create contacts and leads directly from Sales Navigator to Dynamics 365. And this is also where you can turn that on, right? Maybe you know you don't want people to do that. This is something that you can turn on or off. Then we also have in-mail and messaging. So when somebody sends a message through LinkedIn Sales Navigator or an in-mail, you might want to track that data inside of Dynamics 365. So that's kind of what you can do in here. And again, this is also something that you can turn on or you can turn off. Now, Team Link allows users to let them view and search people on their team, those people's connections. So let's say you are on my team and you have 100 connections. That's actually going to allow me to also search your connections as well. And then lastly, we're going to have SmartLinks, which allows us to package and share files through Sales Navigator, and then we can track that engagement, like when somebody accesses that smart link, right? Think of it almost as OneDrive, but we can actually also see when somebody accesses that smart link and then get that notification directly inside of Dynamics 365. So very interesting stuff that we can do here. I'm actually going to skip over this because this is a very old video. I'm going to actually show you this live, how you can connect your instance from LinkedIn Sales Navigator back to Dynamics 365. So let me actually start with that. I'm going to go ahead and navigate here to, let me just go ahead. First of all, let me show you where those settings are in Dynamics 365. We already kind of talked about this earlier, right? You can go click on this, and this is going to give you some settings that you can turn on or off. And now, of course, it's going to take forever. So while this is loading, you can also see if you go here to, and this is now waiting, I guess. Let me see if I need to refresh this real quick because my button is not moving. We can also access that directly from the Sales Hub app as well. I'm not sure why it is all of a sudden terribly slow. This is still loading. We need to wait here for a second. So while that is loading as well, let me then just jump into LinkedIn Sales Navigator. So when you are on the home page, I'm actually going to go here to linkedin.com and I'm going to access LinkedIn Sales Navigator from here. And that will take me to this home page for LinkedIn Sales Navigator. So in order to set up that integration, you can go here to admin, and then you have admin settings directly from within here. And here you can see my production that's already been connected to my Dynamics 365 instance. And then here is your sandbox. So if I wanted to enable or connect these two together, this works the same way for production and sandbox. So basically what you're going to do is you're going to hit start here, and you would go to your sandbox. I'm going to go ahead and this is, I believe, /sandbox over here. I just want to make sure I actually have the right URL, but I believe I have. So I'm going to say we're going to do this in Dynamics 365 Sales. And it's just asking you for your domain.crm, right? So I don't need this entire thing. I'm going to delete this end over here, and I'm going to delete HTTPS. So you're just going to put that in here, and then you're going to click here on login, and that's going to take you to that login screen, right? You're just going to log in. And that is it. That's really all you have to do. You can see now I have successfully connected my CRM and Sales Navigator. So now we can configure some of those settings. So let's click on that. These were all of those settings that I was talking about, right? So whether or not we want to validate CRM data, I'm going to actually talk about this a little bit later, but this is where all of your settings are from here. So let's go back here to see if, yeah, here we go. This sales integration settings came back up. This is what I showed you earlier, right? This is where you can turn this on or off in your environment, or you can just navigate here to app settings. And then here you can see your LinkedIn integration settings as well. This takes a little bit. I'm not sure why this is showing here as enable LinkedIn integration because we already did this. I'm going to save this. All right, so here is also the new area where you can now enable that LinkedIn integration directly from within here. Now, there are some other settings in here as well. You can see here, this is where you can select your users that are going to have access to that. And you can see here, there are some additional features. I'm actually going to finish this and disconnect this. I'm going to continue. There we go. Let me actually go here into production, right? This is what we saw earlier. So once you turn this on, this is where all of your settings are going to be. But now let's take a look here in the account center. And this is where you're going to add users, right? So if you have these folks that are already LinkedIn users, you can see here that you actually need to match them in your CRM system, right? And you can do that. Let me see here. You can do that by sending an invite to CRM. You can also add the users and then trying to find them in your CRM system, which allows you to match those folks together, because otherwise they can't start utilizing the system. So keep that in mind as well. All right, now let's talk about some of the data that's going to be synchronized from one application to the other. Now, as you just saw, the synchronization can be set up both ways, right? So let's talk about what's actually being pushed over. And let's start with what will be synchronized from Dynamics 365 to Sales Navigator. Now, I received several questions about this because I think a lot of people think that as soon as a connection is made on LinkedIn, then the data is automatically pushed to Dynamics 365 as a contact or a lead. And I also heard people say that all connections will be pushed to Dynamics 365, or that users have the option to choose which LinkedIn profiles are synchronized to Dynamics 365. So none of this is true, right? And you probably don't want that either, because if you have 4,000 connections, then all of a sudden they now live in Dynamics 365, right? So we probably don't want that. So let's take a look at the synchronization from both perspectives. Now, from Dynamics 365 to Sales Navigator, you're going to see that account and lead lists are created automatically in LinkedIn Sales Navigator. And when users access LinkedIn Sales Navigator and they navigate to the accounts list, you're going to see the auto-created My CRM accounts. That's actually the name of that list. And that list contains all Dynamics 365 accounts with open opportunities where the stage is greater than the stage that you chose in your CRM sync preferences in LinkedIn Sales Navigator. So this is going to be set by an administrator for all users. And then in LinkedIn Sales Navigator, when you go to that view, under the close date column, users are going to see the close date of any account that has related Dynamics 365 opportunities, right, in that stage. If you're going to click on that date, you're going to be able to view all of those opportunities related to that account. And again, this is all in Sales Navigator. Now, under the lead list, they're going to see the auto-created My CRM leads and contacts list, which shows leads and contacts from Dynamics 365, right? As long as they're obviously, they're mapped to a profile in LinkedIn Sales Navigator. And then you're going to see a CRM button within Sales Navigator for imported records, right? Those are already living in your Dynamics 365 instance. And when you click that button, you're going to be able to open that matching record. Now, this is kind of allowing us to do or this is kind of showing you this feature that I just mentioned, right? Where you're going to go into LinkedIn Sales Navigator. You can see here the My CRM accounts. And here we're looking at RSM. And I can see here that I have a close date for this opportunity. And when I click on that, this is data that lives in Dynamics 365, right? This is really showing me information from my Dynamics 365 instance directly inside of LinkedIn Sales Navigator. So that's pretty neat. Now, let's now talk about the other way around, right? What's being synchronized from LinkedIn Sales Navigator back to Dynamics 365. So obviously, we have the ability to send emails and messages from Sales Navigator to LinkedIn contacts, right? Now, through the integration, we're going to be able to perform those actions directly from within Dynamics 365. And you'll see a copy to CRM checkbox on that message. And that's going to determine whether or not an activity is going to be created in Dynamics 365 as well. So currently, when a LinkedIn contact responds to an email or a message, you're not going to see that response in Dynamics 365, but this is definitely on the roadmap. So keep that in mind as well. And then we can also create notes in Sales Navigator, and you're going to see that similar copy to CRM slider in there as well, allowing you to then push that note to Dynamics 365. Now, the difference here is that notes created or updated in Dynamics 365 will not synchronize back to Sales Navigator, so keep that in mind as well. And then lastly, you can also use Sales Navigator, the Sales Navigator app on your mobile device to make a phone call and then create a phone call record. And then you can push that back into Dynamics 365 as well. Now, this feature allows us to share content, right? This is that SmartLinks functionality that I talked about earlier that's very similar to OneDrive. So you can create a folder, you can add content to that folder, and then when you share that folder with somebody else, you can see when somebody actually viewed that content, right? So then you're going to be able to see that view, so to speak, inside of Dynamics 365 as well. So that's also a very nice thing to have there. And this is kind of what I showed you, what I talked about earlier, right? Being able to now send a message from within LinkedIn Sales Navigator. I can send my message, and then here in LinkedIn Sales Navigator, I see that copy message to CRM button. You will also see that when you're trying to send an email or a message from within Dynamics 365. So I'll show you that in a second as well. And then obviously we're going to also be able to create, like I said earlier, a contact or lead record in Dynamics 365 from that LinkedIn profile. So there's no copying and pasting anymore, right? We can just do this with a couple of clicks of this. Now, again, we need to make sure that the CRM sync is enabled in LinkedIn Sales Navigator, and you need to set auto sync all seat holders with CRM to yes. And you can do this in the admin settings of LinkedIn Sales Navigator, because otherwise this would not work, obviously. Now, when you're enabling this, you can actually require an email address to be mandatory in order to create a contact or lead record in Dynamics 365. And you can also select a lead source value that should be associated to contacts and lead records that are coming from Sales Navigator. Now, this field is actually looking at the lead source code field in Dynamics 365 for both contacts and for leads as well. So any values that you would have configured in that option set field will show in that configuration, and then you can go ahead and then when those records are being created in Dynamics 365, that lead source field or contact lead source field will be set to whatever value you configured there. So this is kind of how you can add that person to Dynamics 365, right? You can see here I have the ability to click on these three dots here, and then that brings up this screen that allows me to add this person as a lead to CRM or add him as a contact to CRM. And then you're going to get a little pop-up window here, as you can see, which is allowing me to tie this to an existing account in Dynamics 365. And then as you can see, I can start entering the information and I can save this particular person directly inside of Dynamics 365. Now you can see some of these fields are pre-populated: first name, last name, job title, and country. The email, unfortunately, is not pre-populated, and the phone number isn't either, so you're going to have to set those fields yourself. Now, besides write-back capabilities, we also have the ability to view LinkedIn profile data directly from within the context of a Dynamics 365 record. And this is actually this will be done by using iframes, right? As soon as you turn this functionality on, then you're going to be able to see that. And we also will be able to use some of the LinkedIn functionality, like I said earlier, like sending emails or messages or introduction requests directly from within Dynamics 365. Now, enabling the integration will add a tab to the forms. Oops, that was a little too fast. Oh, sorry, guys. That will enable a tab. This is that tab here that you can unhide, that LinkedIn Sales Navigator. But if you want to add a tab to your, or if you want to add a section to your form that shows that LinkedIn Sales Navigator information directly on the form and not a separate tab, you can do that as well. That's just a configuration that you can do in the form. So what that looks like is you would actually go ahead and add the last name field, I believe, on your contact record or your lead record form, and then you will add that control. So this is what you're looking for. For a contact or a lead record in Dynamics, you're going to add the LinkedIn Sales Navigator lead control. And if you're looking for an account record, obviously you're going to use this for company profile information. You're going to add the other control directly from within here. And then you can just go ahead and save that and publish that, and that's what that will look like. So let me just go ahead and go back here to my instance here. Let me go back here to the admin settings that we just talked about. So this is, again, right, you can turn all of this stuff on or off, but let's talk about what's actually being imported or exported, I should say, into CRM, as they should have said imported. This is kind of turning it around. But so this is allowing you to create leads from Sales Navigator as contacts in CRM. And what I was talking about earlier is this particular dropdown. What is going to be the source value when a new contact is created in Dynamics 365? So what that means is that the out-of-the-box field, that's actually the lead source code, both on leads and on contacts, this is what it's looking at. So if I open that field, you can see here that I have these two values in there, right? So that's what it's pointing at, right? These two values are exactly what it's allowing me to select from. And the same thing is also available for leads. This is, again, the out-of-the-box lead source code on the lead form, allowing you to set the default value when a new lead is created from LinkedIn Sales Navigator. And that's going to allow you to also report right on that data and really allowing you to get that report and get that ROI back as well. All right. Now let me show you some of that functionality. I'm actually going to show you, you can see here, I have LinkedIn Sales Navigator in here in my account. So this is going to show me the account information. It loads it. This is going to be that, right, that iframe. And it's showing me if I scroll back over here, my primary contact, that's what you're going to see that's loading inside of here. And then if I go to the contact record, that's going to be very similar. The account field will be showing right here, account name. That's going to be showing in the company profile. And then here is my LinkedIn member profile. So let me show you real quick that full functionality, right? We can see here, oops, it's just reloading real quick. We can see the member profile. And again, if this is not a correct match, then I can unmatch that as well by clicking on not the right person. You can see here, I have some icebreakers here, so I can see which connections Angel and I have in common, right? So we can talk about those connections. We can talk about the fact that we both worked at RSM. We can talk about the fact that we are in 3 mutual groups together, right? Pretty nice icebreakers from here. But then I can also go ahead and click on Get Introduced, right? These are now showing me all the folks that we are both connected to, but it's also showing me what we all have in common. So Igor and I and Angel are in 2 mutual groups. Kevin and I and Angel don't really have anything in common besides just being connected. And then if I click on Chris, if I hover over Chris, we all 3 of us worked at RSM, and all 3 of us are in 2 mutual groups. So now I can ask Chris for an introduction directly from here, and that will take me to Sales Navigator. I can send my message and I can log that to CRM as well. Now, I don't have Chris in there, and that's why it's giving me a hard time here. And then obviously, if I want to send messages, this is also something that we can log and track into Dynamics 365 as well. And that will show up. Let me see here if I actually have one of them on here. I'm going to search for Sales Navigator. See if it's, so this is what that looks like, right? This is that message. So it shows as a task inside of Dynamics 365. Also that view, right? If I set up a smart link, it will show here directly as a task inside of Dynamics 365, right? And now, again, now we can start to report on this, or you know, we can have some logic coming up on this, right? Maybe we want to show whenever this person actually viewed a smart link. Now I want to show that as a card here in the assistant. So those types of things are also completely doable as well, right? Because that data is flowing back inside of Dynamics 365. So now real quick, let me just show you. I'm actually going to search for, for Rafael here. And let's just say that I can see here that Rafael is currently not in my CRM system, but what if I wanted to add him to my CRM system? I'm going to be able to do that directly from within here. I can click Add to CRM. It's authenticating, and now it's asking me, do you want to create a lead or a contact record, right? Look at that. My email record is required now because that's how I configured it inside of my LinkedIn Sales Navigator. So I can copy and paste that email. I really wish that they would just put it in here. And then I can go ahead and create that record. So let's just go ahead and do that. This is going to take a couple of seconds, but what will happen is, right, that lead record will be created in my Dynamics 365 system. And now, of course, live demos, right, guys? There's an issue here, so it's not doing it, but it should then create that CRM record inside of Dynamics 365, and now I can start tracking additional things as well, such as messages, such as notes in here as well, right? This is now allowing me to log notes to CRM as well and track them as well. All right, now let's talk a little bit about pricing. Now, keep in mind that this is changing all the time. I'm trying to keep this as updated as possible. So here you can kind of see the pricing for the Microsoft Relationship Sales Solution, right? That's that MRS, which you need to have that Microsoft Enterprise agreement, right, in order to purchase those licenses. And obviously or not obviously, but there is a 10-seat minimum for that. If you don't have that Microsoft Enterprise agreement, then you can purchase LinkedIn Sales Navigator separately, right? So that's another option. And here are some of those plans. And you can kind of review this link here to compare some of those plans here. Now, you have to understand that, you know, with the enterprise, if you don't, or if you just purchase like Teams, that's going to be different features that you're going to be able to see, such as write back and stuff like that, versus enterprise. You also see here that it says on here, contact us for enterprise. The last time I checked, enterprise was $1,600 US dollars per user, and there was a 10-seat minimum. Now, there's no minimums for professional licenses or for team licenses, but again, that enterprise license is about $1,600 US dollars annually per user. So keep that in mind as well. So here are some of the different feature sets that you can see here, right? You get an X amount of in-mail messages per month. You can see here, again, here you get 20 plus 20 additional in-mail messages a month, so 50 total. I'm not sure how they come to 50 because 20 plus 20 with me is still, is it 30 over here? I don't see anything under Teams. But anyway, so this is really allowing you to kind of see what is included with some of those features, right? Between professional, team, and then enterprise features, obviously, as well, right? In order to create that LinkedIn contact, right, in your CRM system or lead, you need to have an enterprise license. In order to get data validation and all those features that are related to data validation, you need that enterprise license, right? So keep that in mind as well, that if you want that, then you cannot get that with just a professional or a Teams license. And this is the website for that. Again, right, it's the business.linkedin.com and then sales-solutions/compare-plans. So make sure that you check that out. You're going to be able to look at all of those things directly from within here. Now, I want to make sure that everybody submits their feedback for our sessions as well, right? So you can win a $50. Oops, I'm going too fast. So you can win a $50 Amazon gift card. So make sure that you actually scan that little QR code that you see on the screen so that you can get entered for that gift card as well. So I'm going to leave this up here for a couple of seconds before we go to our next slide, which is, again, thanking all of our sponsors. We also have them on the bottom of this slide. So thank you again, everybody, for joining. I'm going to go back here. Oops. I wanted to thank you guys for your time today. And again, don't forget to submit your feedback as well, right, to win that $50 gift card. Thanks again, everybody, for your time. And until next time.